All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody enjoyed their holiday. Anybody do anything interesting? While we're waiting for everyone to log on, we could share. We could share. I fed a horse. I did. It was kind of cold, but I still walked the beach and I saw dolphins swimming, families of dolphins. So I had a nice, relaxing vacation. All right, nobody's sharing. Nobody did anything interesting. Everybody stayed home, laid out, and relaxed, and ate good food. As somebody in my other class said, I just stayed home and ate good food. Okay. Oh, we got, I think about three people still out. All right. Where we left off in Canvas, we were in Unit 3. All right. Thank you, Anika, you sharing that you hung out with family. And I did too. First couple of days I was by myself, but then my family joined me, which was nice. My brother and his family, then his daughter and her husband came in. My two girls, they all joined. And so by the end of the week, I had a whole house full of people. So that was kind of nice. Um, okay, so we had just done half of Unit 3 before the break, and we did population ecology. So we're still on population, but now we're looking at the human dynamics of population. So we're going to start from this point in Unit 3 and look at 3.6 today. 3.6 and 7. So I did put an assignment for 3.7 in there, but you might not get to that until Friday. So I'm not worried about that one right now. But we're going to look at the AP Classroom has been assigned. So we're going to look at that, doing that. Um, instead of the 3.7 in AP Classroom is just FRQs. So I'm not going to publish the ones that the guy has, Mr. Sneeds, that has from his video. And also for the practice work, I've created a worksheet for you to complete. So that's the direction we'll go. So I'm not going to create the FRQ work question like I normally do from the videos that he produces. All righty, I think we're just missing one person. Okay, so again, we're going to start today with, um, and I say calculation, there are graphs in the question. So there's actually a whole section in Canvas that just shows you how to do the formulas. And I'll go through that with you as well after we look at Mr. Smeeds. Okay, so I'm kind of going to do 3.6 and 7 together today, and then give you time on Friday just to work the AP Classroom and the worksheet. So let's go ahead and since, like I said, since everybody's just about here, and we do have to pick up the pace because we still have a lot to do, and you do have an exam to do in May. So we do need to start moving a little faster. All right. Uh-huh. Later on, I'm going to put the school now has published an AI use um, restrictions and requirements. So I will put that in the module before the week is out. So you need to remember that while it's good to look at AI, it is not good to copy and paste everything you see over there as your answer. So be careful of how you do that. So now there are penalties for doing that in place for the school. Alrighty, so like I said, I'm going to look at 3.6 and 7 today, and then
Hey everybody, it's Mr.
take
Smeeds,
you
and today
through
we'll
the
be talking about topic
calculations
3.6,
and
which is age
Canvas.
structure diagrams. So far in Unit 3, we've focused more on populations in natural ecosystems and how factors like reproductive strategies can impact their natural populations. Today, though, we're going to shift our focus to human populations, which don't exactly follow all the rules of natural populations, since humans have developed the ability to alter our own resource availability and our carrying capacity. Our first topic of human population is the age structure diagram. So it's a really important diagram that tells us a lot about a human population. We typically look at age structure diagrams based for different countries, since countries are a pretty distinct way to group human populations. And here we have the age structure diagram for the United States. And the first thing to do is to make sense of the units and the layout of the diagram. So on the y-axis, we have age cohorts. So these are just groups of individuals all born within the same time period. And then on the x-axis, we have the number of individuals in each age cohort. So the width, or how far out that age cohort sticks, represents how large it is. So for example, if we look at the 0 to 4-year-old female age cohort in the United States, that bar projects out to just about 10 million. So we have 10 million 0 to 4-year-old females in the US. We'll also talk about 3 different larger age cohorts that we'll be comparing today, and what their sizes, which make up the shape of the diagram, will tell us about their country's growth. Today's objective is to be able to explain age structure diagrams, and the essential knowledge we need in order to do that is that the shape of an age structure diagram tells us the growth rate of the country, and that the more rapidly a population is growing, the higher proportion of young people it will have compared to stable populations that aren't growing much or populations that are declining. The suggested science skill for today is data analysis, specifically explaining patterns and trends in data to draw conclusions. So now we'll talk about age cohorts. The number one mistake that APE students of the past have made when it comes to age structure diagrams is they've just memorized what the basic shapes mean, and they haven't been able to always explain why and how different shapes of an age diagram can tell us about their growth rate. So we need to understand age cohorts instead of just memorizing the shapes.
All right, I'm going to pause it there because that's an important fact. All right, so while he's giving you the shape, and it's good to know, be able to recognize the shape, you do need to be able to explain. Okay, so the answers in the AP classroom will ask you to explain why, or the reasoning for the shape being the way it is.
So an age cohort is just a group of individuals all born within the same 4 to 5 year range, meaning that they're roughly in the same age group. So in demography, or the study of human populations, we break populations into 3 large age cohorts. That's the 0 to 14 age cohort, which we call pre-reproductive, the 15 to 44-year-old age cohort, and that's the reproductive age, and then 45 plus, which we call post-reproductive. And we're going to represent these in the diagram with blue, yellow, and orange. Now we'll talk about how the sizes of these cohorts tell us about the growth rate of the country. If the 0 to 14 age or pre-reproductive age cohort is the largest, then we have a pyramid or a triangle shape, and this means that the population is growing. The larger that this 0 to 14 age cohort is compared to the others, the more dramatic the pyramid and the higher the growth rate. This means that the reproductive age group is having lots of children, which means that the population is increasing. It also means that there will be future growth because all of these individuals in the 0 to 14 range have yet to grow up and start having their own children. If the pre-reproductive age and reproductive age cohorts are roughly the same size, it indicates slight growth or stable population that's neither growing nor declining. This means that the reproductive age group is having only about the number of children needed to replace them, so the population should remain stable. If the reproductive age population is larger than the pre-reproductive age population, that means that they're having fewer children than are needed to replace them, and the population is in decline. And this is typical of highly affluent or wealthy countries like Germany and Italy. Now we'll look at shapes of age structure diagrams, which are an easy way to remember, but we have to know why the shapes mean what they do. So an extreme pyramid means that there's a far larger pre-reproductive age cohort than the reproductive age cohort. That means there's a high birth rate and very rapid population growth. If we have a less extreme pyramid, that means there's still a larger pre-reproductive age cohort, but the growth is less dramatic. So there's slight population growth, but not explosive growth like we see in the really wide base pyramid. A house shape, or a diagram that has roughly equal distribution throughout the pre and reproductive age cohorts, means that the population is relatively stable. I like to think of a house as a stable place to live, and so it's a stable population. There may be slight increase or decline, but the population is close to stable. Now, if our base is actually narrower than the middle, meaning there are fewer pre-reproductive age individuals than reproductive age individuals, that means the population is actually in decline. It's going to be shrinking. Another way to think about this is to look at how steep or how gradual the population is. If a person were to be walking up this pyramid, this is a really easy walk, and so they're going to be moving very quickly, so the population is growing very quickly. Now, if a person is moving up this pyramid, this is very steep, so they're going to move a little more slowly, and so the population growth is a little more slow. Now, a person would have a really hard time walking up this pyramid since it's not even really a pyramid, so they're going to stay relatively stable, just like the population is stable. And here, this is virtually an impossible climb. Someone couldn't really walk up this pyramid at all, and so they're not going to go up. They're going to stay down at the bottom, and this population is in decline. That's just another easy way to remember it. So now let's get a little more practice reading an age structure diagram. The first thing I want you to do here is to look at these 4 countries and try to rank them from highest to lowest growth rate.
All right, so I'm going to pause that and kind of maybe on a sheet of paper next to you, based on what he just told you, how would you classify those? And he's changed the coloring just a little bit, so he has dark green, kind of a regular green, and a pea green. Notice also that they're always comparing the males and females against one another. They give you the age groups in the middle, and males are on one side and females are on the other. And they're not always going to be the same numbers. So when you're explaining, you have to make sure that you include that observation as well.
Remember to compare the pre-reproductive, or dark green age cohort, with the reproductive, the medium green cohort. Don't just look at the shape. Now I want you to try something a little bit harder, and that's counting up the total number of pre-reproductive age individuals in each country. So that's the number of males and females in the 0 to 14 age group. And that's a little confusing on this graph, so just make sure to look at the dark green groups for each country.
I'm going to pause it for a minute. Oops.
Our suggested science skill for practice FRQ 3.6 today is explaining.
Okay,
Our suggested science skill for practice.
I was trying to go back so you can actually see the answer. You flashed that so quickly. All right, there we go. Well, all right. So those are the kind of questions you need to be practicing, being able to look at the graph and interpret the graph according to how they, so there's several questions they can ask you about a graph like this.
Our suggested science skill for practice FRQ 3.6 today is explaining patterns and trends in data to draw conclusions. So see if you can identify the country with the slowest population growth rate and then explain your answer. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like this video if it was helpful, subscribe for future APES video updates, and check out other notes over here to the side. And as always, think like a mountain, write like a scholar.
Okay.
Hey everybody,
we already started.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 3.
All right, so I am going to, like I said, go through both of these, and then I'm going to switch back to Canvas before you release you to the AP classroom, because Canvas breaks this down. There's 2 parts to 3.7. One simply shows you how to do the calculations. So we're going to watch. This one is short. We're going to shorter. We're going to watch this one, and then we're going to go to the Canvas. Canvas classroom, Canvas module that shows you how to do the calculations.
7, which is total fertility rate. We'll just be calling it TFR here to save time. So we'll start out with a quick definition of TFR and then take a look at the global trend in TFR over the past 65 years. So TFR is just the average total number of children that a woman will have in her lifetime. And again, like I said, throughout the video, we'll be talking about TFR, and we'll be talking about TFR of different countries, since those are the human population distinctions that we usually consider. Here, though, we have the global TFR, and we can see that from 1960 to 2015, there was a steady decrease in the global TFR. So I want you to think about what explanations there might be for this trend, and then check back with those later in the video as we go into more depth. So let's take a look at our objectives for topic 3.7. We need to be able to explain the factors that affect TFR. In order to do that, we need to know that the basic factors affecting TFR are the age a woman has her first child, educational opportunities for women, and access to family planning and government policies that limit TFR. We also need to know that total fertility rate at replacement level just means that each woman is having enough children to keep the population stable or not growing or declining. And finally, that infant mortality is dependent on access to healthcare, nutrition, clean water. And we'll look more in depth at how infant mortality rate can change over time and how it affects TFR. And our suggested science skill to practice today is describing patterns or trends in data, which we will be doing a lot of in this video. So first we'll talk about how TFR and infant mortality rate are related. So as a reminder, TFR is just the average number of children a woman will have in her lifetime. And if we think about what this means for population growth, it means that a higher TFR will lead to a higher birth rate and therefore a higher growth rate of the population. Replacement level fertility is the average number of children, or TFR, required to offset the deaths in a population and keep the population size stable, so essentially zero growth. So think back to our age structure diagram notes where we talked about the house shape. Those are countries that are experiencing replacement level fertility, since the women there are having just enough children to replace themselves and their partner, so the population stays stable. In developed nations, replacement level fertility is about 2.1, meaning that if the TFR is 2.1, the country should remain at a stable population size, because this is just replacing the mother and the father. And then the 0.1 is to compensate for the small number of people that either don't have children or the children that die before reproductive age. In less developed nations, though, replacement level fertility is higher because infant mortality rate is higher. So because more infants die before reproductive age, more need to be born in order to keep the population at a stable size. So less developed nations may have replacement level fertility that's more like 2.5 or 2.7. Infant mortality rate is the number of deaths of children under 1 year, and we measure it per 1,000 people in that population. It has a really significant impact on TFR, as we'll look at a little more in depth in a minute. And it's important to know that in less developed countries where there's less access to clean water, reliable food sources, and healthcare, infant mortality rate is much higher. This then results in a higher TFR to replace a lot of these children who are lost in infancy. So if we look at these global graphs of TFR and infant mortality, we should notice a pretty strong trend here. The countries with higher infant mortality, so the darker purple on this graph to the right, are also the countries with higher TFR, or the darker orange in the graph on the left. These are generally less wealthy, less developed nations that have less access to clean water, healthcare, and reliable food sources. So remember, to compensate for that high number of children that they lose to infant mortality, the women in these countries will have more children overall, and that will raise their TFR. Now, if we look at these two graphs of infant mortality rate and TFR over time, we can see that as more countries become developed and gain access to clean water, reliable food, and healthcare resources, their infant mortality rates drop. So over time, we're going to see the global infant mortality rate drop. That's going to result in less of a need for replacement children, and so the TFR is also going to drop as well. So if you think back to the graph we looked at the beginning of the video, you'll notice it here. This is a major driving force behind that declining TFR. There are a lot of other factors, though, that influence TFR, and we'll be talking about those in the upcoming parts of the video. So now we'll talk about the factors that affect TFR. So as a general rule of thumb, the more developed a country is, or the more affluent or wealthy it is, the lower its TFR. And there are several reasons for this broad trend that we see. The first is educational access for women. So as countries develop, they offer more schooling to women, which increases their knowledge of their reproductive health, and that decreases the likelihood that they have unplanned pregnancies. Also, more educational access for women usually translates to more economic opportunities for women. So they may be more likely to have a job or start their own business. This causes TFR to decrease for a couple reasons. Economically empowered women are less likely to marry and have children early in life for financial security, and they're more likely to pursue further education and career opportunities, which just leaves them less time for raising children or causes them to delay having children until later in life, and then they'll have fewer. As countries become more developed, they also generally have more access to family planning resources. This could be counseling centers like Planned Parenthood, or family planning education in schools about how to choose when you want to have children and how to avoid unplanned pregnancy. They also gain access to more medical facilities that can provide abortions, as well as contraceptives like oral birth control medication and condoms. So all of these factors are going to significantly decrease the TFR of a country. Lastly, we have an economic factor, and that's that less developed countries are more likely to have what we call an agrarian or an agricultural-based economy. This means that having a large family in these countries may provide needed farm labor and bring in income for the family. So as countries become more developed, families have less reliance on agriculture for income, and so they have less need for large families to provide that agricultural labor. Government policy can also have a really significant impact on TFR. And this is especially prominent in less developed nations that have really high TFR, and especially ones that are concerned about overpopulation. So governments may adopt policies to try to lower TFR. So the first one is sterilization. So countries may offer free sterilization procedures such as tubal ligation for women or vasectomies for men. And they may even offer individuals an economic incentive, so money, to have this procedure done. Another policy countries may adopt in order to limit their TFR is a restrictive policy, such as China's one-child policy. Now, it's a little bit misunderstood. APE students of the past have had the misconception that the Chinese government would show up and just seize a second child or throw the parents in jail, and this isn't really the case. It's more of a significant tax on families that had more than one child, And it was extremely effective, although they have relaxed it now to be a two-child policy. So if a family has more than two children, they pay a pretty significant tax, and that discourages families from doing this. Governments can also offer tax incentives to families that have fewer children, and even things like lending programs can be set up which will offer women a microcredit or a loan in order to start their own business if they don't have children. So this is a great way for developing nations to help slow population growth while also lifting women out of poverty. So now we can take a look at some data that support this idea that affluence or wealth has a really direct impact on TFR. So as we look at this graph here, we can see that as average family income rises, so as we go out on the x-axis, TFR drops pretty steadily. So as we've discussed already, this is for several reasons, but we have a few of the most important ones over here to the right. So wealthier nations have more access to family planning resources and contraceptives. These are things like oral birth control pills and condoms. They also have more educational and economic opportunities, which just leaves people less time to raise children. So they're less likely to be focused on having a family, and they're also less likely to rely on children for agricultural labor because their family income is rising due to job opportunities that don't require agricultural labor. And finally, as countries become more wealthy, they have lower infant mortality rates, and therefore they just need fewer replacement children. Another really significant factor that plays a role in determining TFR is female education. So here in this graph, we have the average number of years of schooling a woman has received on the x-axis, and we can see that as that increases, TFR steadily decreases as well. And we've talked about this already, but let's remind ourselves of a couple of reasons why. The first is that as women are more educated, they understand their bodies and their reproductive systems better. So they're just less likely to have an unwanted pregnancy. They also generally have more economic opportunity as they become more educated, which makes them less likely to marry at a young age for financial support. And that makes them less likely to start having children at a young age. They're also more likely to spend time focused on either advancing in their career or continuing their studies. Both of these things will often cause women to delay having children, and then that just results in them having fewer over their lifetime, which decreases TFR. Our suggested science skill today for topic 3.7 is describing patterns or trends in data. So I want you to see if you can identify and discuss two causes for the trend in worldwide TFR that we see in the graph here. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like this video if it was helpful. Subscribe for
So like I
future.
said, I'm not going to put his TFR, I'm sorry, the FRQ in the Canvas because when you go, and my AP classroom is probably expired. Yeah. All right, so when you go to the AP classroom, the whole thing for 3.7 is each question is an FRQ, so we're not, so just answering those will be sufficient as far as that is concerned. Now, what I do want you to look at before you start going to the AP classroom is the fact that, again, your Canvas has divided 3.7 into information like what he just gave you in the video and a whole unit on how to calculate. So the 3.7 here will define fertility, and again, TFR is total fertility rate. So he has, the Canvas has the similar pictures and diagrams and information there for you to look at. So again, with this one, it's a lot of graphs. You have to be able to look at the graph and interpret the graph. What is it telling you? And then come up with reasons why the graph probably looks the way it looks. So there's a lot to look at there. But what the next section does is totally about showing you how to calculate. Um, so each of these sections is a video that you can watch individually, and she will explain how to calculate each one of these. So the worksheet that I created is a worksheet on each of these. So you'll go through and
Hi everyone. Today
oh,
I want to talk about
okay.
calculating population growth rate. First of all, we're going to need our formulas. So I'm going to use my formula.
Okay. So she's going, and let me make this a little bigger. So there's a script for it at the side, so you can follow what she's saying. It's also got closed captions, but she will go through and give you the formula to work on. She takes a long time to write the formula. All right. So what you want to do with each set of problems that you come up with is you want to make sure that yeah, show your work. That means write the formula that you're using, plug in the information that is given to you, and then come up with your final answer. And that's just good practice for what you actually have to do on the test. You've got to show where you got how you calculated your answers. And that means show the formula, um, show the steps show how you plugged in the information and did the math and then come up with a final calculation. So again, each of these is its own video showing you the different ways to calculate growth. Okay, so positive growth, steady growth, and negative growth. And again, on the side here is just the transcript. You can make that go away and just watch the movie. But there is an explanation for each of those. So there is a worksheet that I've included to practice doing that. So again, I don't expect you to get to that until Friday. What you do want to do today in the time that's left is start with the AP Classroom and go through the 3.6 questions and then continue on to the 3.7 questions. Both of those have been released. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? All right. So, and actually they are MCQs, but they're all graph questions. And we're just going to leave it at that. And then you do the calculation questions. As your turn-in assignment. All right, again, I've opened up both sections 3.6 and 7, but I only expect you to, in the time that's left, to really get 3.6 done today. And then just come in on Friday and continue with 3.7. So again, focus on 3.6 today, 3.6 today, 3.7 on Friday. If you're looking at age population in Canvas and you go through um, the slideshow that they give you there, they give you a lot of explanation as to how to read the chart. So this one, it tells you, if you're looking at the title explains um, the year and what kind of population you're looking at. Are you looking at the world? You're looking at the country? What exactly are you looking at? They use the term cohorts. Each bar is a cohort. Yeah, those are the individuals from the same group. So, and the group is going to be defined for you in the middle. Okay, so everybody in that bar on that level is in the same cohort. All right, the births, you're adding individuals at the base, always at the base, and then you move up. I like the way he used the term replacement children. People don't have replacement children, but they kind of do in certain countries. If they have a child dies, they're looking to have another child, but they don't. It's kind of weird to call it a replacement child. But if we don't if people do not reproduce, the species dies. That's for everything. So populations need to become stable by having as many children born as are dying. All right, and the same thing. The deaths, the top of the pyramid is going to represent. Is going to be smaller because it represents that there are less people due to people dying. Okay. Right. And then when you're looking at when they show you different countries, then they might ask you, why do you think the death rate is so high, like in one country or in one place than another? So this is where explanations come in. Why is the bottom so wide? Why is the middle the way it is? Okay. All right. I just wanted to point that out, that you do have those explanations in Canvas. So they have economic rates, the medical care, access to clean water, reasons for birth rate, industrial countries, and I talked a lot about educating women about their bodies and their reproductive rights. Okay, so do take note of that list here in Canvas as well. Then they go through and they give you all of the different um, things that he mentioned in the video. So do take the time to click on all of these, expand them, read them. Each one of these pictures has explanations if you expand the each one of the boxes. And as always, read the AP tip. All right, so again, focus on 3.6 today, and then worry about 3.7 on Friday. Okay, folks, if you are in a good place to stop, do so, and you may log off, and I'll see you on Friday. Oh my goodness.